Thank you everyone for joining. It's Sam again, your host from PLS Global.
Mhm.
Um, I'm hoping you guys are enjoying the football, what the Americans call soccer. So there's been a lot going on. Um, this webinar was actually very much geared to the Indian market. So we have a lot of people that are joining us from India, and then we're going to have another webinar later on um, in the evening, which is morning time in the US, evening for you guys. Um, BLS, as you probably know, we've been experts in giving advice on EB5. There's a lot of changes to the EB5 rules and a lot of updates, which Paul, I'm sure, will share. One of the reasons we really pushed Mark, Ken, and Paul to do this webinar because when we speak to you guys give us a lot of conflicting information. And we always speak to Paul to make sure it's corrected. And it's no surprise that you're getting that information either from third parties or potentially online. Because the beauty nowadays, we have many widgets and gadgets that give us, seems to be our best friends in advisory role. However, it's not correct. Trust me, I've been in a number of litigation cases where the judges have gone completely or really frustrated with the number of people referencing certain case laws on AI, which has been, which is not, judges are like, this isn't how it's done and how legally it's correct. So you really want to speak to the experts. And this is why I've got Apple Mountain and West Virginia Regional Center. We've invited a lot of people to this webinar that actually made an inquiry before, but we really want to understand why you haven't decided to opt in for this project. This is for us to understand what we can do to eliminate your concerns. Maybe some of your concerns are to do with, getting information, but we want to get the record straight. So you really don't want to hear from me. You really want to hear from the regional centers and the project and what's out there. So Mark, Ken, Paul, I really want to give you guys a platform and really address these people, what's holding them back and what I believe might be a reason, but I really want you to give them an outline what's out in the market and what is the true facts in terms of your project. So I'll pass it
Great.
over to you, Mark. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Sam. We appreciate it and welcome everybody who's here with us today. We appreciate your time. Just quick introductions. My name is Marc Weintraub. I founded, along with Ken, the West Virginia Regional Center. We have sponsored a number of EB5 projects over time. All of our investors have received their temporary green cards. Some people are in the process of getting their permanents and getting their money back as well. Our focus has always been smaller projects in smaller places. West Virginia is a small state. We've never focused on large urban projects. So when rural became a big deal in the EB5 world, it was helpful to us. We started looking for unique rural projects to sponsor. And we're in the midst of one now called Apple Mountain, which you'll hear us talk about in a little bit. Also with us is Paul Ruby. Paul is a very experienced immigration lawyer, specializes in investment immigration and EB5, has processed hundreds and hundreds of EB5 cases. And us here at Apple Mountain rely heavily on Paul's advice to help us make sure we're doing things perfectly and to be smart and strategic. So with all of that in mind, we actually thought we would do something a little bit fun and a little bit different today, which is hop right on ChatGPT and ask Chat some questions about EB5 and rural and Apple Mountain and see what Chat has to say. See where we think Chat is right, see where we think Chat is maybe missing the mark a little bit. Go through that way. That'll take us maybe 30 minutes. And then we'll leave a bunch of time for investor questions towards the end and have a good, fulsome discussion. We will lose Paul Ruby for a few minutes in the middle of this. He actually has a scheduled call with USCIS on an important topic. It'll only take him a few minutes, but that's how Paul Ruby's world works. So we'll lose him for a bit, but then he'll be back. And if any questions come up that we need Paul's help with while he's gone, we'll get him back and get those answers. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and screen share, and we will get started. Um,
So, Mark, just so I advise the attendees, there is a um, question icon as well as raising your hand. I know some of you guys have. Um, we'll be answering questions throughout the process, right? Marco, do you want to?
yeah,
Yep. Okay. All right.
post the questions whenever you want to, and we'll try to answer them as we go, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
One other point. Uh, Apple Mountain Program has in the past taken on investors who needed a loan. We have filed a handful of loan cases. Those are moving very, very slowly. Um, and so Apple Mountain and our loan provider, who was an independent third party, sort of put our heads together and we said, look, we need to stop doing these loans, certainly until some of these loans are approved, but probably completely because it seems to be slowing down the process for people. And that's not our goal here. Our goal here is to get people their EB-5 temporary green cards as fast as we possibly can. So if you are here because you want a loan or you have questions about loans, feel free to stay, but understand that as of this red hot minute and for the foreseeable future, Apple Mountain is not helping people to arrange loans at this stage. If you have family or friends or others that want to loan you money, that's fantastic. It's a great way to pull together your EB5 source of funds. But Apple Mountain's ability to arrange a loan for you no longer exists. So if you're here for that, I don't want to waste your time. All right. That said, let's take a look over here at ChatGPT. We've got chat set up. Let me make sure I've got it set the way I want to. I think I do. So I've obviously done a lot of discussion back and forth with chat about the Apple Mountain project in the past. I don't want that to pollute the responses that we get today. So my first thing I'm going to say to chat is please ignore that we've talked about Apple Mountain EB5 in the past. Next, let's just ask a very, very general question here and see what Chad has to say for us. So let's discuss EB5 visa programs. I'm a potential investor from India seeking a USA green card. Which category of EB5 is best for me? All right, chat, go to work. All right. So, for an investor based in India, the answer is relatively clear today. A well-structured rural regional center EB5 project is generally the strongest category. That makes perfect sense to us. You get a nice set aside as in rural. You can file through a regional center. Very, very important. And these reserved categories are really good. And statutory priority processing, really, really important. So the reservation of spaces and the statutory priority processing, very, very important in rural EB5s. Now, what else does chat say? Well, chat says we also like high unemployment area programs for you. They do not receive the same statutory priority processing that rurals do, but chat seems to really like urban projects and larger real estate developments with different market risks. This is a really good preview of one of the things that chat pushes really hard in the EB5 world that I know we personally disagree with. But that's why chat likes also these high unemployment programs is because they allow for these large urban projects to get in. And there is a reserve allocation of 10% of annual visas, whereas for rural, 20% of annual EB5s get set aside. So they only get 10. Chat also mentions infrastructure and unreserved. Chat doesn't really like these, and we tend to agree with chat about this. These are not great, especially if you are an investor from India who is looking to obtain a green card and do it quickly. So again, their rankings, they love the rural ones. They like the high unemployment ones. Infrastructure and unreserved, much less interesting. And now we agree with chat also, choosing the right project is even more important. But the best thing you can do, as far as we're concerned, is find an excellent rural program. If you can find an excellent rural program, you get the best of both worlds. So even within the rural category, projects differ dramatically. I would evaluate using them with factors such as, so these 10 factors is a pretty good solid factor, but let's just really focus on that for a second and go ahead and ask chat the following question. It'll probably come back with these 10. But in the meantime, Ken, Paul, Sam, anything that you guys would want to add to sort of what chat has to say about how it categorizes and ranks the various types of programs? Okay,
No,
very good.
no,
Yeah.
it looks
All
good.
right.
I like it.
Okay. So now we know that choosing the right project is very important. So when evaluating a rural EB5 project, what are the most important factors? Boom.
I would love for some of the investors to put their hands up if they actually follow this routine. So it's good for us to understand.
I'm also would be interested in hearing from people if they've used Chat or Claude or the other AI agents to run through this,
So we've got
and
a few hands up now. We have a few.
and you know what they're hearing.
Yeah, yeah. So Venkat, yeah, we do the same. Yeah.
Let's see. All right, here we go. So the 10 most important factors. Confirm that the project is actually rural. Very, very, very good point. Um, I actually believe the very most important factor is a little bit different than this, but we'll get to that in a minute. Because I think the first thing that you absolutely want to make sure is that the project has already received full approval from USCIS, right? That's the most important thing. And part of that is the true rural qualification. So I think chat actually misses like a very, very key thing at the very top. Job creation cushion, definitely an important thing. Confirm that the regional center is approved, that the project has property, securities, and immigration, and the offering complies with the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act. Again, that's all stuff that can be done by looking to the pre-approval of the project from USCIS. Really important. Capital stack strength. So, who's funding this project? Is there lots of developer equity in it? Is there strong senior debt or is there no senior debt? Committed non-EB5 capital is it, and committed non-EB5 capital are better than a project overly dependent on EB5 money. A fair point and an interesting one. The developer's track record. Has the developer completed similar projects, similar markets, similar scale? The regional center track record. How's the regional center done with similar projects or projects in general? How are their approvals? Project economics. You want to make sure you get your money back, right? So, what does the economics of this really look like? Very, very important. This is also this exit strategy and repayment source. So, that's all, I think, good. What are the investor protections? Escrow terms, are there redeployment provisions? I would run from redeployment provisions if I were an investor. I'm investing in this project, not another project I don't know anything about. So I think that's important. And then timing risk, if you're doing unreserved, this is a real problem. But in rural, you want to make sure you get in this year into this year's rural bucket. Really important, but that's the thinking. So these are the top 10 that we're looking at. But again, the fact that they didn't even mention project approval here is really, really important. Paul Ruby, you want to talk about that project approval process a little tiny bit and what that approval is and why it's so important?
Yeah. So when USCIS made some fairly significant law changes that came into effect in 2022, they released a bunch of new forms and processes, and then slowly through last week, they have rolled out instructions on how they interpret the law, what they want the procedure and process to be, and so on. And one of the rules that came into effect said that every project that's going to be pooling investors together needs to file a project-related application through the regional center called a Form I-956F, just like any of the other forms. There's just a code, it's a name, it doesn't have any intrinsic meaning. What you do when you file that is you file business plan and economic report, you file corporate documents, and then you file kind of the securities documents, the offering memorandum or PPM, you may call it, partnership agreement, subscription agreement, and so on. And then other information about the project as well. And USCIS reviews it. They either ask some questions about how you have done kind of anything that they think is outstanding or remains to be answered. You know, and in most cases, then they approve it. And what that means is that the investors do not need to worry about the structuring of the project at that point. USCIS in approving the project says it's compliant with the rules, and you do submit the project approval and the documents and so on. But you'll see in the approval notice, if you have it, that it says, this approval of the project is valid for any investors unless there's a material change of the project or other catastrophic types of changes. And so what that means is it focuses investors on kind of the fact that, like, okay, everything is fine here. The only thing in your case USCIS is going to be doing is making sure there's no material change to the project or anything like that first. And then most importantly, 90% of their attention is going to be focused on reviewing and tracing the source of the investment capital in in the first place. So what I tell people is that if you're looking at pre-approved projects, probably 85% of the work is already done. And that cake is baked, and it's good, and USCIS has validated it and confirmed. Projects with a I-956F pending can take investors. They can file forms I-526E and so on. But it's a less certain kind of process because they don't have the pre-approval for all the compliance with the regulatory and statutory requirements. So the project pre-approval is a critical thing, huge peace of mind, and really it essentially means there's going to be some quick document checks and so on, but the substance of your petition, your I-526E, will be essentially limited to a review of tracing the source of funds and the path of funds to the project and so on.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Sam or Ken, anything else to add?
Yeah, just kind of going with what Paul said, USCIS also has a first in, first out rule. So if you do an investment in a non-pre-approved project, they're not even going to look at your petition until the project is approved, which is going to significantly delay your petition and you getting your temporary green card. So I just want to bring that out. I make that a point as well.
And Paul, was there a recent notice that basically said the only thing that USCIS is looking at right now are applications that are filed on pre-approved projects, or did I misunderstand that?
They have said that they will not approve a I-526E filed in connection with a Form I-956F by the project and regional center until they have acted on the project's application first. So what Ken's describing is accurate. It kind of is like there's a line if the project is approved, and then there's a separate kind of like line or holding area if the project is not approved, where for your project to come up, they will have to, or for your personal petition to come up, they'll have to approve the project beforehand, before they'll take a step on yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So now let's ask the next question, which to get us focused on the Apple Mountain project and for us to be again able to sort of compare what it is that chat is saying about things versus reality. Because here we've seen that chat's generally right in this list of 10, but really missed and didn't get exactly the right answer for number one, certainly. And I think a couple of others also had some room for improvement. So here's our next question. Please evaluate Apple
Mark,
Mountain
can you share
EB5
your
based on
screen?
these 10 points.
Are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I had forgotten to do that. Let me get it back for you.
And the viewers, I really would advise you to ask a few questions. What would you ask the chat as well? And we can advise you if it's the right question or not.
Yeah, let me make sure I got the right share going here, you guys.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. Please evaluate Apple Mountain EB5 based on these 10 points that were above. Here it is. It says, based on public information, Apple Mountain EB5 looks immigration attractive, but investment riskier than many hotel residential EB5 deals because it's an agricultural expansion project on reclaimed mine land. And it's still working on doing its little analysis. Took a little while, a few minutes ago, to do this, but we're going to wait and see if it gets this organized for us quickly. So obviously, the first thing it's saying is rural qualification is very, very strong. The Apple Mountain project is a USCIS approved rural project. You can wait for it to be a response. Let's see here. Let's reload and see if we get anything better. Here we go. All right, excellent. It's done its job now. Based on public information, Apple Mountain EB5 looks immigration attractive, but investment riskier. Let's go through this and figure this out. So strong rural qualification, and it is a pre-approved. So that's excellent. Job creation cushion. This cannot fully verify publicly. So this is the biggest missing item. You need to know the economic report showing total jobs, number of investors, methodology. In fact, this information is publicly available. But we are happy to share with you that our job cushion is 11.4 jobs per investor. And one of the things that chat also does not understand is when jobs have already been pre-created. So in the Apple Mountain project, a number of jobs have already been created by the investment that the equity sponsor has put in. And so there are a lot of, like the first set of investors, we already have a handful of investors that have filed, but for even the next handful of investors, the jobs are already created. So that risk is completely gone. USCIS project compliance appears favorable. Project says it has an approved I-956F, which is correct, and that's true. The capital stack. So this is mixed, needs diligence. So we explained that there are 63 EB5 units that are available in a loan structure, and $7 million in loans for a pack house. You need the full capital stack and lien priority. Good question. Here's what that is. The equity sponsor here in this project, Appalachia, has already put in over $10 million to get this project started and to build out the first 120 acres. And there's also a $7 million government loan that has been obtained and is being spent to build the pack house, which is just a specialized cooled warehouse that apples are stored in until they are ready for sale. And all those jobs get counted in this project. And the $7 million on the pack house is almost, you might call that senior debt. But in fact, the investors here have a first lien deed of trust and a first lien on all of the assets of Appalachia. So the EB5 investors here are, in fact, the senior lender. This information also publicly available, even though chat doesn't seem to find it. Next up, developer track record, promising but specialized. The project has an operating 60-acre orchard and first harvest, but this is still an expansion from proof of concept to large-scale commercial execution. That's a fair point. This is the first apple orchard that this developer has ever built, but they've already built 60 acres. They've already harvested from 60 acres and done very, very well with that harvest. That information also publicly available. And now they're merely taking those 60 acres and expanding them out over 1,000 acres. So they've already done this job. They've done it on this exact site. I think that's pretty darn good track record from my perspective. The regional center record, West Virginia Regional Center, since it says it's sponsored two prior projects with 100% I-526E approvals. That is correct. There's not a third yet, right, Ken? Or is there a third?
Right. No, there's just this
Yeah,
is our third.
this is our third. So we have two and two very, very solid projects that have done very nicely, have never had any questions from USCIS on any issues. USCIS did take a good hard look at our 956F application for the Apple Mountain project, and we had some great discussions with them over economics and economic forecasts. We backed those down a little bit to make USCIS more comfortable, and they approved the project. So, in fact, the project has been approved on a fairly conservative model, which I think is very, very helpful. All right, project economics. Yeah, these definitely need careful review. The concept is credible, but agriculture has crop, labor, weather, disease, yield, price, and distribution risk. Public sources show plans for 1,000 acres by 2031. That's correct. That's exactly what we're going to do. Let's talk about these risks that ChatGPT has brought up here, similar to ones that USCIS brought up. Number one, we have crop insurance. We will have crop insurance available here. So we will not be taking crop risk. We will not be taking disease risk. We will not be taking weather risk. Our yield is proven. We've already shown from the 60 acres what we can yield. And so we feel very strong that the yield is just going to be a matter of multiplying the yield that we had on the 60 acres by the number of acres that we add each year. Labor, also not an issue. This project is in rural Kentucky. There are a lot of able and ready workers to do the work to build this project and to also harvest and tend to the apples. We already have a number of those people hired. We will hire more as we expand, but finding the labor here is not a risk. We're completely fine on that. Exit strategy. Our exit strategy is probably not publicly available because we keep that in our PPM, which we don't make publicly available to comply with securities laws, but we're happy to provide it to any investor who signs an NDA. And the exit strategy is actually quite simple. Once we have 2 years of full harvest, we are able to go to the market and either sell this project or much more likely get USDA financing, as ChatGPT says here, based on the fact that we will have 2 full years of harvest and cash flow, and that provides the money to refinance the loan. USDA will provide Appalachia with a very, very favorable interest rate loan that will be used to refinance the EB-5 investors and pay them back in year 5. That's how we get them back. So the 2 key risk factors from getting money back are 1, we need to grow, well, 3 if you want. 1, we need to grow the apples. We believe we have that risk factor covered with a combination of experience and insurance. 2, we have to sell the apples. Well, we've already been selling apples. We know exactly who our customers are, and our customers are fantastic. They are Walmart, they are Trader Joe, they are Aldi's, and they are the local communities, like the local school districts in the area who buy the apples for school lunches. All of them have been very, very happy with the first significant harvest that we had in the fall of 2025. Our apples are growing right now. It's July of 2026. We will have another harvest this fall. Those apples will get sold again, and will make our customers even happier. So that's sort of number 2. So grow the apples, sell the apples, and then get a USDA or state financing loan. Well, We've already reduced risk on that because we've already obtained significant amounts of state and federal funding from the USDA with respect to the pack house and other portions of this project, much of which has been grant, but some of which has been loan. And so the USDA is already familiar with this project, familiar with Appalachia. So we feel very strong that they're going to be able to fund the loan that takes out the investors once the full crop is planted and has been sold for a couple of years. So that's all, I think, very positive stuff. Investor projections cannot verify publicly. This is sort of the same stuff that we talked about before. I think it's also a really interesting thing to think through. Okay, the Apple Mountain exit strategy is sell apples and get a loan from the USDA as a way to pay off the investors. How does that compare with other rural projects, like rural residential development projects? Those projects need to go find hundreds of people to buy the houses that are being built, for example. What about rural real estate development, multifamily, need people to come and rent the apartments, hundreds of people. Or you might need thousands of people to come rent hotel rooms, for example. Here, we just need to sell apples to 5 or 6 different sources and get a USDA loan. It's actually fairly simple. Um, Finally, timing, very, very important. The sooner that people can get in, the better people are going to be. Get on this, get it done. You can get into the 2026 rural program if you invest in short order, and make sure that you jump right to the front of the line. So, immigrate. So these grades are pretty interesting. I agree with this A minus. Maybe it's really an A. I think the 956 approval and rural are the most important components to that. Project execution risk. I think that ChatGPT gives us a pretty low grade here compared to what we ought to be getting. And once you all look at the PPM and the loan documents and understand exactly how strong this project is from a financial perspective, this grade goes way up. So interesting to see how ChatGPT looks at us and where we think they get it right and where we think they get it wrong. Ken, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, several things. One is the job cushion. So one of the things that's interesting is most of the other rural projects that are real estate based are all based on construction jobs. But we all use an economic model, and our economic model for agriculture actually has a much higher job creation multiplier than construction. The other thing is we're also considered industrial and manufacturing because of the pack house, and the pack house creates jobs as well. And so that gives us again another higher multiplier. When we filed for this project, you remember, Mark, that this was still just an open field. I mean, it was a concept.
Right.
And by the time the project was approved, the 60 acres was in the ground, it had trees. We're now going to have our third harvest this August, next month. So we've already created significant amount of jobs already. And so our first investors are getting those job allocations. For all the new investors coming in, that money is going right into the next expansion portion of the project, which is another 100 acres. And that money is very easily tied to and shown to create the jobs that will be required for your permanent visa when you file your 829. So, we also have done a really good job of eliminating everything we can for your visa risk. And that's why, again, ChatGPT has given us an A minus. We think we're an A. So
All
I think
right.
that's an important
Great.
factor so the first part, as long as your source of funds is clean and good, and again, working with your attorney or our attorney, we won't even take your money until we know that your source of funds and your petition is strong. Because we're looking for 100% approval rating on our I-526C petitions. So we've eliminated your visa risk for you with all the money, the time we've spent getting all the pre-approvals, working with the project sponsor, getting the jobs created. And then the big issue is getting your money back, right? And I think you've talked a little bit about that already. So that would be
Okay.
my most important point.
Well, we've got our first question here from Vishnu Kumar. Vishnu asks, my cousin is giving me a surety as a guarantor for 50% amount bank loan out of the 800,000. Will USCIS agree with secured funds? So this is a great source of funds question. I'll tell you, along with Paul Ruby, who is talking to USCIS on different topics right this minute, I rely pretty heavily on Sam and his staff at BLS on source of funds. Have excellent source of funds experience, having advised hundreds of investors over the years, especially source of funds questions coming out of India. Um, so, I don't know, Sam, I'm happy to have you answer this question. I also think I know the answer to this question.
Mhm.
But go right ahead.
Yeah, what we're seeing in the market nowadays that they want a bit of security. So where a lot of people are taking a loan, if there's a bit of collateral associated to it, it's the documents that's got to be presented. And if there's interest, then that works very well. And we have got many means of dealing with this. So Vision like speak to us because we're not gonna, you know um, deploy this document. There's ways around this, which is on there. But we obviously USCIS is now being a bit more selective than ever before. This is what I'm finding with a lot of people. So there are ways and means of doing this, and of course, if you have a guarantor and their money is, we can show it in many ways, which will be the case anyway, because that you just throw a number of options that can be done, and then we find out which way. And to be honest, don't complicate your cases. What I find with a lot of people is they try to complicate it. If there's a really straightforward way of explaining the funds, we recommend you go through that path in order to do it. So it's good. It's always a good option, but obviously we want to show exactly how your cousin made the money, and of course, and the bank documentation. That's very important as well.
Yeah. Look, bank loans are a fantastic source of funds for USCIS EB5 projects because it's easy for USCIS to see, oh, this bank gave $400,000 here. We understand how that came in. That source of funds is going to wash up and be pretty clean pretty quickly. Um, I personally don't know how closely USCIS might look into your cousin and the surety and whether if they're having to post money or if they're just a guarantor because they have wealth and they're able to show on their personal financial statement to make the bank comfortable that the money will be paid back. Might be an interesting question for us to ask Paul, assuming he's able to return here in a minute. But I
It's
feel
also,
like
Mark,
if
it also depends
yeah,
on the quality, how regulated the bank is. So there's certain
right.
ratings for banks, and it depends on the bank itself. We will make some advice on that. But if you do struggle, then there's a few banks that we've worked with that have been given the green light. So
Okay.
while we wait
So
for
yeah,
Paul, I just encourage people to ask more questions because we want to go on to the next one. Um, yeah.
right. But Vishnu, generally speaking, I'm very much in favor of the concept of a bank loan with a guarantee from your cousin. I think it's a very smart way to raise up some money, a smart way to utilize friends and family and banks in a way to put together the capital that you need and the source of funds that you need. So I think it's an excellent idea. Um, while we wait to see if there are other questions that folks want to
So
post,
Mark and
yeah,
Ken, I have a question. Like, so a lot of
Mhm.
people that I face is that once they go to, it's not just Chat GPT, they also go into Claude. So they have like,
yeah,
so what they do straight away type in, can you give me the top five regional centers? So that's what people tend to do. And, we know you're not the top five regional center, but it's not just about the regional center, it's about the project. And I can't name a number of regional centers that have defaulted with many developers, lawsuits, and that's why I encourage you to do your due diligence. So it's not like, here you go, ChatGPT or Claude tells me these are the top five regional centers. I should be only investing in those regional because there's a lot of projects out there. It's really looking deep into the project and also the PPM.
yeah. Look, I mean, I think one of the things that I would do if I were an investor is I would I appreciate ChatGPT has a preference and tends to lean towards the larger regional centers, for example, that have larger projects. I think that's because there's just tends to be a little bit more information available for those projects out in the internet. There's more activity, generally speaking, and so that's the kind of thing that the Claudes and the ChatGPTs like is more stuff. So that's a reason why I think they like those. I think if I'm an investor, what I want to try to do is sign up for, sign the NDA with Apple Mountain, sign the NDA with another rural project if you want to, or with even a non-rural or maybe a high unemployment one, and grab their materials, get their PPMs, get their I-956 approvals and applications, feed those into AI and see what they have to say. Like make those a little bit,
Uh, uh,
get better information.
I'm going to give you a recent case that happened in the last couple of weeks. I'm not going to give the project's names or anything. The investor
Yes.
said, on this project, I get 6% to 8% preferred returns. I said, no way. I said, that's too good to be true. I said, that doesn't make sense. Why would a regional center want to do EB5 if they can get that similar equivalent with a bank? Doesn't make sense to me because the whole idea is obviously it's cheaper capital with EB5 plus you're getting the green card. I went to the investor, I said, please share me the PPM. When I looked into the PPM and I threw it on Claude, I said, listen, pick up all the
Yep.
bad stuff. Then I discovered it's preferred. They don't necessarily get 6%. It's only when the final investor gets their I-829. So I realized they're only getting the 6%, which could be 6 years, 10 years down the line. Now, if the final investor hits retrogression, that means they're not getting a 6%. So it just all looks glamorous on paper that you might get up to 6%. But I said, do you realize if you do your calculation, you go into a project which is paying you 2% every year, you're going to get your 6%. Technically, on that project, you might get it after 10 years. By that time, you should have had your conditions should be removed. But your conditions won't be removed because the final investor is based on getting their I-829. And he said, Sam, thank you so much for this because I was anticipating I'm getting 6% every year. I was doing that calculation and I'm going to be getting my green card. I said, no, it most likely is going to happen within 9 to 10 years. So we have more questions.
Right.
I really wanted to give the audience a true story that's happened within the last few weeks. Okay.
Yeah. And I see Mr. Ali's question. We'll get to that in just a second. But like another sort of point that I would make on Sam, especially on your story there, like the idea that somebody went and got the PPM, the advertising said one thing, right? Then they got the PPM, and what did that investor do? It was really smart. They took that to an expert, somebody who looks at this stuff all the time and understands the ins and outs of it. Yes, Sam, you put it through Claude because that makes your life a little bit easier to look at. But you knew when you see what Claude has to say, you know how to read the PPM and see what Claude does and does not get right, you know? And the big point that I was trying to make by doing all this stuff through ChatGPT today is to say these AI agents, they are often wrong, but never in doubt, you know? And so you really have to still check what these AI agents are saying to make sure that it's right. And you have to check it, either go back to the project sponsor and ask questions and make them show you how it all comes together, or get with an agency like Sam's agency and say, help me read this, help me understand it. What am I missing? What's right? Like you're not going to get the full picture out of AI at this stage. You're going to get a partial picture, and you're going to get some things that are right and some things that are wrong. You might actually get some great questions to come out of it, but at the end of the day, those things need to be verified. The same way that Sam was talking before about lawyers getting in trouble because they're taking AI produced items to court and judges are getting angry because they're wrong and nobody's checking them. Same concept here. You can't just rely on what AI has to say. We've got to look to what is actually happening and ask the human beings who know what they're talking about to get the best information. All right, Mr. Ali, I only have $600,000. Is a $200,000 loan possible? Well, look, yes, a $200,000 loan is absolutely possible. Just you need to find somebody to lend it to you. Whether that's friends, whether that's family, whether that's a bank, whether that's like Mr. Kumar, who has a cousin who's willing to give a bank a guarantee. Going out and finding that $200,000 can definitely make the difference between where you are right now and getting an application filed. The only thing I want to just be crystal clear is we're not available to help you arrange that loan right now. We're happy to talk to a lender. We're happy to work with any lender to help them understand the project and how you're going to get paid back if that's important to them. But we're not able to arrange the financing for you or make an introduction at this point.
Yeah. See, why the regional centers shouldn't be lending to investors. It should be a third party. And there's a lot of lending institutions out there, and we can make some connect. And Brother Ali, you should really ask Paul for the 200,000 because he's actually gone out of this bloody webinar, and that's it. That's the penalty he should face as a 200K fine for getting out. So your loan should come from Paul Ruby. But no, I see what you mean. Okay. But we want to enjoy the webinar. There's a few more questions. I don't know if you guys can
Yeah,
tap in your
I got them.
one. Yeah, go, please. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, Mishra, can you give me partial payment after September? So, Mishra, good question. We do not recommend at all, applying with less than $800,000 and then adding on to that. If you're interested in reserving a spot with us and then being ready to pay as the year progresses, and then we'll file your application when you do have the full 800,000. That's no problem. We're happy to do that with you, easy. But the idea of filing, having invested less than 800,000 and then hopefully putting the rest of it in, it's risky. It can be done, but it has to be done very, very carefully. And if that's something that you really need to do, we should schedule time offline with Sam and Paul to talk you through that and help you understand how to do it. So it's possible, but we don't recommend it. But if you need it, we'll figure something out.
Paul,
Um,
we have a penalty for you of 200K loan because it's like the soccer and the football. The ref has given you a 200K penalty for being offline. Paul?
For Paul.
I think
Sorry.
Paul is flabbergasted. He doesn't understand what's happened to him. But Paul, while you were away, talking to USCIS, an investor asked if they could get a $200,000 loan, and we told them they could get that loan from you. So just wanted to let you know that.
Yeah,
Of
USCIS loves
course,
loans. So
right.
Paul,
Of
here's
course, we're teasing.
Paul,
yeah.
if I have 600,000, I have 200K coming in September, October. Should I file now or should I file fully with 800,000?
The safest thing, honestly, I think would be to wait. Um, it's theoretically possible to file now, but if we're talking, 2 or 3 months, it doesn't appear that the priority date situation is going to be so dire between, say, now and October that we may have to do something a little more aggressive. The biggest issue with the forthcoming funds, the partial investments or whatever, is that USCIS really disfavors them. And the standards they've established largely for how they review these things is that on the day you file, you have to provide and disclose the entire plan, and it cannot change. And so if you have a house you're selling overseas and you're expecting the funds in a certain, you have a contract on the house and everything, and it's probably going to close, in 2 or 3 months. If everything goes as you expect it, then great. But like real estate closings do not, other sales do not. And if you need to change and you need to amend the price and then there's missing, there's a gap, USCIS is going to have really serious questions and doubts about it, and they've been very consistent on this, which is that when you file, everything but for the final payment has got to be complete, including the path of where that money is coming from and when it's getting there. And if you miss that, it's going to be a major problem, and it may be so dire that they consider it a material change and would say they need to deny the whole petition and you need to refile, again. So to me, the risks of trying to save a month or two by going in with three-quarters of the money are just not um, worth the risks, because you get kind of one shot at how it's going to be, and if anything changes, it could sidetrack and derail the entire thing. It's very, very easy for that to happen. So I mean, I just think this is an area about which we should be cautious, and like as they say, discretion is the better part of valor sometimes.
Yeah, and I can add to that too, Paul. I mean, we've had an investor reach out to us who did that. He did a partial investment. He wasn't able to get the rest of the money. His petition was completely denied, and then he was scrambling to try to get his money back that he invested in the project, which was difficult, and he did ended up losing money along the way. And in the mean, so he basically didn't get his visa, lost a huge amount of money, and his money may be tied up in a project he doesn't want to be in. So.
There's a
Great.
question for you, Mark. When will you get the crop insurance? Or you've got the crop insurance?
We're going to get the crop insurance in the next 6 to 12 months. We're going to start doing some serious planting in after this coming harvest. And so once that planting begins, that's when we're going to become eligible to go out and get the crop insurance. So we'll be obtaining that in short order. And it's a requirement of ours. We're looking forward to going and get it. We've been talking to insurance providers for that. We know it's going to be available to us. It's available on fairly reasonable terms because apple crops are very, very robust and resilient crop. And the area that they're in, the area that this apple farm is in, is not subject to major weather issues, generally speaking. So it's a fairly easy product for us to obtain. Is there enough time to apply? Is there enough time before the deadline to apply? So, in my head, the real deadline right now for EB5 applicants to apply sort of falls into two places. One is, there is a deadline at the end of September of this year, and then there is another deadline at the end of this calendar year. The end of calendar year deadline is a really important one because at that point, the investment amount is going to go up. So $800,000 is going to be your number until December 31st. Thereafter, it's probably going to be something significantly higher than that as it adjusts for inflation. USCIS has announced this. They just haven't given us the number. For a long time, we thought the date was going to be September 30th for the investment amount change, but they did push it back to December 31, which was nice. But I don't see that date getting pushed back again. Paul Ruby, you agree with that answer?
Yeah, USCIS released a bunch of tweaks and changes. Investment amount is going up on January 1st, as Mark said, no matter what. They did not announce the amount. They said it would be, as the statute says, tied to inflation. And then rounded to an even number. Lowest would be 900,000. Realistically, probably something in the 930, 940 range. So the cost for the same investment unit, the price goes up 20%. But the grandfathering positions, like Mark, protections, like Mark said, are also kind of critical as the September 30th date.
So that said, there is time. There is time, even if you're considering the September 30th deadline. There is time for us to all work together, us, Sam's group at BLS, and you as an investor, to pull together source of funds, pull together your documentation, and get you filed. No problem. But every day that goes by, that gets more and more difficult. So waiting, not a great idea, but there is time to get that done if you want to. Got that answered. Um,
Okay.
And now that we got Paul
okay.
back, maybe we can go back to the question from Visnu about the
Oh, good
cousin,
idea.
the security and guarantee. I don't
Paul
know if you
Ruby,
saw that
Vishnu
question.
asks, yeah, yeah, I've got it right here. Paul Ruby, Vishnu asked the following. Hi, all. I have a question. My cousin is giving me a surety as a guarantor for a 50% amount bank loan out of the 800,000. Will USCIS agree with secured funds? So, I mean, one, we love bank loans. We think they're a great source of funds. So no problem. But I think my real question in looking at this question was, how will USCIS look at this cousin who's providing a guarantee for the bank loan and want to do source of funds on the cousin in any manner?
I don't think they should. I think whether they will or not may not be as answerable. But none of the funds originate from the cousin, right? Like it's just the loan. And so it's a bank loan that gets different rules than a personal loan, which in which case they may analyze, the lender's, personal finances and capacity to make the loan and earnings and so on. If it's just the surety, I don't think there would be a basis by which the inquiry could be made. I think if I were working on one of these as an I-526 case, um, I would provide all of the documents, but I don't think even discussing the surety or in a separate case, her personal finances would be something I would raise independently. It's not necessary. It's not a legal requirement, and it opens the door to further questions. So that's how if this were my case that I were preparing, that's how I would view it. But I don't think because the bank is the lender that the surety's assets are relevant to the $800,000 going into the NCE.
I have another question which was asked through email. Has Indians hit retrogression on EB5?
Not yet. There have in the past year or 15 months been some cryptic messages in the bottom of the visa bulletin. It comes out every month. It establishes the priority dates, and sometimes there's something about EB5, sometimes there's something about family cases, sometimes there's something about EB2, whatever it may be. It has been teased, it's been warned that it's forthcoming at some point. It has not yet arrived. It's unlikely to arrive to rurals before high unemployment TEAs, so we should get some advance notice for that. But it's not here yet. Now, um, oftentimes with the visa bulletin, the government's fiscal year goes from October 1st to September 30th. They may run dry on visas for the annual quota and say, okay, we're not doing anything in EB2, EB3, or EB5 for the month of September until the quota resets in October 1st. But that's not retrogression, right? Like that's just that's just an anomaly of this process and how the counting goes. So I wouldn't worry about something like that if you see a U in any of the categories for the September visa bulletin, because it's a 1 month thing, and it would say that at the bottom of the visa bulletin. It's just say we've exhausted our EB3 and EB5 quotas for India-born people, and EB2 for China or whatever, but we expect these to reset with consistent with normal counting procedures on October 1. So you may see something like that, but there's not a meaningful additional weight here for India-born or anyone in the rural and new TEA carve-outs. It's only the what they call the legacy projects.
Okay. So, chaps, I think in India they're a bit more quiet than the ones in the US. They ask
No
questions.
problem. We're
Yeah.
just about at the end of our hour anyway.
Yeah.
Um, Paul, there is another question that is a little more direct than I would ever really ask you in public, which is how much is Paul's legal fees in total? So rather than asking you exactly what your legal fees are for EB5 investors, because I think it also depends to a certain extent on each EB5 investor and how organized they are and where they are with you, what's a typical legal fee that an overseas investor should be prepared to pay to find an excellent immigration lawyer to help them through the EB5 process?
I think probably the range for that, for most immigration lawyers is somewhere from a little bit under $20,000 US to perhaps 25,000. Um, I think most immigration lawyers will look and be on the lower end of that spectrum if someone is already paying um, for a third party to do the source of funds in in their home country, because then there's a lot less for the immigration lawyer to manage. Whereas if the immigration lawyer has to then use their office staff to do all the fund tracing and sourcing and so on, it's a lot more effort and likely to be towards towards the higher end. So, and frankly, my preference is not to be towards the higher end. It's, to have a local chartered accountant that knows what the, business documents in India or wherever you're based look like, and in your area, and knows what the bank, kind of creates, and knows what tax filings look like, and knows how to put one of these things together. So certainly we encourage, and it results in either a neutral amount of spending or a small net savings to engage, a third party kind of source of funds, tracing group to help manage that side of things.
I just want to add, because of this, a lot of people are filing towards September. Immigration attorneys are super busy. Honestly, they're super busy. The prices have gone up because there's extra work being placed. There's a lot of rush. See, in India, I understand it's not like your visa's coming to an end. Your kids might be aging out. But Chinese or Indians that are based in the US, where they've got a deadline, this is the only option for them. And when it's the only option for them, they're rushing. And I know, obviously, we see it, we have time. However, we deal with calls, communications with 10, 20 investors on a daily basis. And let's say three of them are deciding to do EB5. You can imagine the population, the amount of Indians that are on H1B. It's a crazy time. And you need a lot of time to make sure you get your ducks in a row, your source of funds. And it's a very difficult time now to get hold of a lot of attorneys. And you really want experts to do this. And good attorneys are difficult to get hold of. Where what I like about Mark is kind of packaged it all in together. You have us for your help with your source of funds. Paul's there. It's just making things very easy for you. It's really choosing the right project and the slot, and asking us what questions would you ask them, and really looking at the PPM. And that's why we get involved, because we do a lot of enhanced due diligence on the project, not just the marketing brochures, actually the PPM and there's a subscription agreement, operators agreement, a lot of stuff that we look into. And those are pages after pages, nearly 600 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sam, like that point that you're making is actually the one I was wanting to kind of finish up with today anyway, which is, we saw today when we were asking ChatGPT questions, ChatGPT's I think it's slant towards maybe the larger regional centers and the larger programs. And I think one of the things that we're a lot better at than a lot of those larger programs is making sure, like we're very personal with our investors. We need to understand who you are, what challenges you might have and how we can work our way through them. And the only way for us to do that is to do that as a team. It's why we like working so closely with BLS, because when it comes to India-based investors, I don't think there's anybody that has more knowledge about how to get money out of India, how to work through source of funds in India and get that perfect for an EB-5 application. It's why we work so closely with Paul. He's got fantastic hands-on knowledge of how to work these applications through USCIS. Where are the pitfalls? Where are the shortcuts? How do we work our way through those? How do we take the BLS source of funds information and put it to work for us to be more efficient? And then for us, it's a matter of, like, for Ken and I, quality control. We've never had a 526 rejected because we don't accept 526s unless they're perfect. And so we're here to stand guard for you as well and make sure your application is going to be successful. That's what we do. We are not a volume player. We are a boutique project. We are a boutique regional center. We always do small projects so that we can make sure that we're providing high quality, excellent investment opportunities that are going to get you your green card. That's who we are. So that's where I think we want to finish today. If there's any of the participants here that need more information, that want to talk to any of us, we are available, we are open, and we are welcome because that's the way we operate.
No, I really agree with you, Mark, because this week itself, an investor had multiple Zoom calls with you guys, and they couldn't, you guys wouldn't accept them. So what they did, they came to us to see if we would accept them for the EB5 application, because you weren't happy with the source of funds. So you guys have, so this is the level of acceptance you guys go through. That you guys wanted, they felt that they could come to us, and he said, Sam, we don't want a petition that's going to get denied. Okay, so
Yep.
how to schedule a one-on-one consultation? I don't know if Mr. Patel, we're going to reach out to you, and if it's to do with the project, it'll be Mark and Ken, and if it's an immigration matter, then it would be Paul. So yeah, so we'll do that. But we should be
Yeah,
having
Mr. Patel,
yeah.
you'll hear from Sam and his folks at BLS. They'll get organized and we'll get you whatever you need.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. We really enjoyed it.
All right.
Thank you, Paul.
Great. Bye all.
Bye-bye. Bye.